if we think about just church now, I said, this is the new normal. This is a different way of us going about, I guess, church. There's, for a lot of things, there's a little bit for now, and when I say a little bit, for some of you, it's a whole lot of bit of life is very different now. And so I just thought it'd be good for us just to look at, if we're talking about church, this is Church Online, everything about church, except for the fact that we can gather together in the same room, can still be the same thing. And so just being mindful of that is, Matthew chapter 16. And for me, this is, as we look at this and do this, there's a little bit of reset on things in our thinking and all of that. Maybe it's a little bit of fresh revelation and understanding about things. And so in Matthew chapter 16, there's the bit that a lot of us are very familiar with. And that being familiar with is the fact that Jesus asked one of his disciples, Peter, he said, who do men say that I am? And Peter gave a response to Jesus. This is what people are talking about. This is who people are saying that you are. And then Jesus brings another question back to Peter, as Peter answers and says, but Peter, who do you say that I am? And one of the most important questions for a lot of us to make sure that we are really comfortable in, right? And meaning comfortable means we can rest in this. We can actually just go, whoa, I'm gonna bring everything back. I'm gonna dial everything back. In John chapter 14, verse 1, Jesus said to his disciples, don't let your hearts be troubled. If you were to say, what was he implying there is, don't let yourself be given into panic. Don't let your heart run away with fear. Is there things that we should be concerned about? Absolutely. But allowing ourselves to cave into fear can actually be detrimental to us. Allowing ourselves to run on with worry that it turns into panic can be detrimental. And I believe that just coming back and going, I know who God is. I know what my faith is rocked on. I believe is just a really good place to make sure that if you're going to bring yourself back to anything, I know who God is. My faith is in this. Don't let things run. So when Peter responds to Jesus and says, well, I believe that you are the Son of the living God. In other words, that you are not son as in, we think about, hey, I've got a son, not in that context, but your origin is, you are of the living God. And so Peter gives that response. And then Jesus said, blessed are you, Peter. And he changed his name from someone who was sort of, a little bit flimsy. He was all over the place. His name sort of represented that. And he says, I'm going to call you Peter. And in other words, Peter meaning you're going to be rock solid. You're not going to be given two things. You're not going to be all over the place, but you're going to be rock solid. And your name's going to be Peter. And then he says, and upon that rock, Peter, I'm going to build my church. Eugene Peterson puts it in the Message Bible where he says, I'm going to build my church, and my church is going to be expansive with energy. So it's not something that in the intent of Jesus, where it's something that is insular and insecure and small and innocuous, but it's something that in God's intention in the purposes of Jesus is that it's expansive. In other words, it's something that's alive, something that's active, something that is real. It's not a concept, it's not an idea, but it's real. When we talk about our faith in God, we're not talking about faith in a concept, we're not talking about our faith in an idea, we're actually talking about the person of God is who we're putting our faith in. And so he talks about, Jesus introduces, hey, upon this rock, I'm going to build my church. And in Ephesians chapter 1, and verse 20 to 23. If this is, out of the Message Bible, it says this. It says, all this energy issues from Christ. God has raised him from the dead, set him on a throne deep in heaven, in charge of running the universe, everything from galaxies to governments, no name and no power exempt from his rule. And not just for the time being, but for forever. He is in charge of it all and has the final word on everything. At the center of all this, Christ rules the church. The church, you see, is not peripheral to the world. The world is peripheral to the church. The church is Christ's body in which he speaks, in which he acts, in which he fills everything with his presence. So how does God fill everything with his presence? Everything that's going on right now, where people are wondering, people are concerned. For some people, you look at them and think, is anything bothering you? Then there's other people, it's like everything is bothering you. How does God bring his peace into people's lives? In verse 27 of John chapter 14, Jesus says to his disciples again about that, don't let your hearts be troubled. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't run away with panic. Don't run away don't let your heart fail you with fear. Don't give in to fear. I'm going to give you a peace. It's a peace of heart and a peace of mind. And that peace of heart, peace of mind, he says it's a peace that the world can't give you. It's something that I'm going to give you. And I believe one of the challenges that we have is to be able to, the people around us, that we are representative, that we have a peace about this. We're not a lack of concern, not a lack of care, but we actually just have a peace about it. And because it's through his church that he speaks, that he acts, that he brings his presence into everything. The bit that I wanted to focus on is the fact that he says that the church is not peripheral to the world is peripheral to the church. In other words, his intent to impact people is through this thing that we know as what is called that is called the church. In Ephesians chapter 2, verses 19 to 22, let me read this for you. It says, I'm going to read from Message Bible again, all right? And so if I look at this is what it says. He says, that's plain enough, isn't it? That you're no longer wandering exiles. This kingdom of faith is not your home country. You are no longer strangers and outsiders. You belong here, as much right to the name as Christian as anyone. God is building a home. So God is building this church that we're talking about is this. He's building this home. And he says he's using all of us, irrespective of how we got here, in what he's building. He used the apostles and the prophets for the foundation. Now he's using you. He's fitting you brick by brick, stone by stone, with Christ Jesus as the cornerstone. So this church that Jesus said that he's going to build, all right, is one is he's using. It's about people. All right, we are the church. It's not a church building. And I know for a lot of people this is not a new thing, but I think it's important that we remember this. But Jesus is the cornerstone of it. He's the benchmark that we take everything that we take everything from. If you go, what's our basis of behavior? What's of all of those things? We've got to look to Jesus. Colossians chapter 1, verse 15. I say it all the time. Jesus is the visible image, the invisible God. If you're sitting there and you may be thinking, how do I get the right picture of God if that's where I've got to get my sense of, I feel good about this. I'm not freaking out. I'm concerned, but I'm not freaking out. Where do I get my sense of perspective on how I see God and all of that? You look at Jesus. In the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, best place to go to look at Jesus. Look, the bits you can't understand what he means when he's saying, don't get caught up in that. Get caught up in the way he conducted himself. Get caught up in the way that he treated people, the way that he interacted with people, the way he cared about people. If you're sick, remember this. If you look at one of the great hallmarks of everything that Jesus did is the sick. The sick that come to him, he healed them. If you go into the book of Acts and it's the people who are now the followers of Jesus, what was one of the hallmarks of what they believed? One of the hallmarks of what they believed is that they believed that Jesus still heals the sick. And so look at Jesus and you'll get your correct perspective of God as you move forward. I guess the thing I want to focus on maybe a little bit in all of this is he said he'd build his church. And just this week, talking to some of our leaders, I touched on this a little bit. Right? He said he'd build this church. And this word church, if you go back into, everyone loves original translations and all that sort of stuff. And we sort of throw around just this word ecclesia. And its original it was a term that was not always associated, well, it wasn't associated with what we would call as religion. It was a word that Jesus used, and that word that he used he said, it's a people called aside for a purpose. Called aside for a purpose. And so in this time, that we're part of his concern, we're a part of his house. But come on, I want to put the challenge out that we're called aside for his purpose in everything that we're doing. Be thinking about the people around you and thinking about those that need help. Some people need help, they need encouraging. Some people need help, they need material help. Potentially they're going to need food. Potentially going to need people who are going to say, you know what, I've got means and I want to help you. And that's why, everything from why is our giving still important, why we got the website where people can donate, so that there's an aspect where we can collectively be doing things. But at the same time, I just really want to put the challenge out to you is the fact that you're thinking about everybody that is around you, because we're called aside for a purpose. And Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, if you pick it up in verses 13 to 16, Message Bible puts it like this: let me tell you why you are here. And he talks about being salt, seasoning, and all of that. Talks about us being light. And then finishes by the time you get down to verse 16, where he says, live your life open, be generous. In other words, come on, this is our chance for us to say to the people around us, let's reveal God to them in whatever that might be. And I'm sitting here talking like this, and I'm saying that, and I'm thinking, if I was talking to everyone at the Dominion, everyone go, yeah, but I can't hear you. So there you go. But I guess that's the wonders of you're sitting there listening to me, and I can't even see if you're still there. But anyway, come on, let's be thinking about how am I revealing God. It's not a time to cave into my selfish whims, but it's a time to let the Jesus that's in you be the expression of your life. Well, there's loads that we could say and all of that, but if I was to maybe just finish on just this thought, because probably two thoughts I want to leave with you. One is come on, this is a chance now for us to be the church as one with each other, and understand that this whole thing that we're called aside for a purpose, and that is we might reveal and bring the reality of God into people's lives, whether it be practical, whether it be spiritual. But that's what I think is the most important thing for us to be thinking about if we're thinking about being a church right now. We can't relate, all right? We can't get together, and they gathered together and all of that. But we can still gather together through the wonder of technology. So we can isolate, but we don't need to disconnect. We can participate, but we don't all have to be in the same room to participate in something happening. But at the same time, it's about our faith in our faith in God, all right? And what's he like is that probably an important thing, because can I say, God's not a God to be feared. We often use the term fear and we associate it to, I'm fearful of what's going to happen in this moment. But when we use the term fear when it comes to how we see God, it's not fearful. I want to encourage you, don't see God in whatever's going on in your life as a place where it's like, I'm fearful of what God is like and what's God doing. I want to encourage you to see God as the God that you run to, not the God that you're fearful of, but you run to Him with a real sense of confidence. Romans chapter 8, verse 15 says you've not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. So we're talking about spirit. So when you give your life to Jesus, and there's all sorts of scriptures that talk about that he becomes a part of our life. Words that Paul uses in the Gospels, Christ in us, all of these sorts of things. In other words, there's another scripture that Eugene Peterson puts in the Message. It says, God touches our spirit with His Spirit and brings our spirit alive, all right? So when we're in relationship with God, He's not given us a spirit that we behave like fearful slaves, but instead you receive God's Spirit when you are adopted as His own children, and you call Him Abba Father. And for His Spirit joins with our spirit to affirm that we are God's children. So when you're picturing God, when you're seeing God, I want to encourage you, come on, He's the God to run to, right? Not to run to Him and see Him as the God that is, okay, how do I define my relationship with God? Picture the best loving, caring Father that you can possibly imagine. And He's better than that. See Him like that. See Him as the one that you run to. In Romans chapter 8, verse 38, Paul says, in New Living Translation, says, and I'm convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Neither death nor life, no angels nor demons, neither our fears for today or our worries about tomorrow. Let me read that again. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. God's love is active. It's not something that's passive. It's not something that we just talk about. It's active. It's when the Bible talks about He is love, it's talking about the expression of God, the moving of God, the act of God within our lives, all right? And nothing can separate us from it. Neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, neither our fears for today, right? No matter what's going on right now, and I can 100% understand fears, all right? Or our worries, I can 100% understand worries, where this is going to impact all of our lives. What is going on about what's going to happen tomorrow can separate us from the love of God. So I want to encourage you to stay grounded in the basics of what the gospel is about. And over the weeks, as we work all this out, we'll obviously move on. And so just want to remind you of that. Fantastic. So we're just about coming to an end. I got Phil is here, and so Phil is one of our pastors in the life of the church. And I just thought, so Phil, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Great message this morning. I guess it's a great reminder of not allowing the trouble which is around us to invade who we are as Christ followers, and the importance of the mandate of being Christ's ambassadors, of the role we have to play in providing hope and pointing people towards Jesus in such a strange, fearful time for a whole lot of people.
Yeah. So, okay. So how'd you come to know Jesus?
I was invited to our church by a friend a little over 10 years ago. I was on the outside. I seemingly had it all together. I had a great job, had a seemingly great life, but internally, I was a mess. I was broken. There was so many things going on with me, and I had a concept, an idea of who Jesus was, but it wasn't until I entered our church that I got a revelation, actually, who Jesus was.
But would you say, so you went from I knew of him, knew about him, but now I know him?
Yeah. So I went from understanding him. I grew up going to church every Sunday. My mum would drag us often to church, but it was a
Remember, it's
concept.
Mother's Day, don't just
Happy Mother's Day,
thank
Mum.
God for mums. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a concept. It was a religious idea of do's and don'ts. I had to conform to something, and that didn't push me towards him. It actually took me away, and it wasn't until I came to our church where I understand it's not about religion, it's a relationship.
Okay, relationship. How does that, so now you're a pastor, you're supposed to be superhuman and all of those sorts of things, or whatever it might be. But how does I know him personally? How's that helping you right now?
I guess for me, it's understanding that he cares and is intimately involved in every detail of my life. So he cares about what's going on right now. He cares about my yesterday, and he cares about my tomorrow. And for me personally, it's all about putting my trust and my faith in him, and as I've got to know him.
Awesome. So you may be here today, and wherever you are, and you've found yourself at this point right now, and maybe you're at home. Maybe you're stuck with someone in our church that's watching church online, and you're there, but you have been listening. And the question I'd probably ask you, do you know him personally? That's probably the most important question you can ever be asked and be able to answer. Do I know him personally? Because you know him personally, it changes so much in your life. And I want to give you an opportunity right now. It's sometimes we see it like there's some difficult formula to come. How do I get to know God? How can I say I know God? There must be a whole lot of things I have to do. Well, there is, and that's simply make a decision to go, I'm going to believe, because that's faith, and say, God, I need you. I need you, and I acknowledge that you made a way, not played away, but you made a way so that I could come to know you personally by putting my faith in who Jesus is. He's a visible representation to us of the invisible God. He did something for us so that we could step into a relationship with him. And so if you're there and you think, you know what, I think I could do with, I just think, God, I could do with you in my life right now. I need you. Then I want to encourage you to just take that moment in your own heart and say, okay, God, I need you. I want to put my faith in this Jesus, and I want to pray for you. And so, Father, I just pray for every single person right now that doesn't know you, that you would just reveal yourself in a very real, a very personal way to them. As they reach out to you and they say, God, I need you. I want to follow you. I'm going to put my faith in Jesus. I'm going to determine to begin to look to him and to follow him. Lord, I pray that they might find you in Jesus' name. Amen.